During mixing, you'll really come to appreciate the power of the AW4416. We'll briefly look at several mixing-related functions in this fast start video, but there's much more to the story. So check out the reference guide and the operation guide for details on all of these functions. If you would like to follow along, load the demo song So Fine. To do this, press Song, F1, then use the data dial to select So Fine. Move the cursor to Load and press Enter. When the Will Save Current Song dialog box comes up, move the cursor to Yes or No and press Enter to begin loading. After the song loads, you will want to turn the AUTOMIX off so as not to fight the faders during playback. Simply press AUTOMIX, then move the cursor to the AUTOMIX Enabled button and press Enter. This will allow us to experiment and make changes without running into the AUTOMIX moves. Remember, though, to not save the changes we're about to make in your machine. Now, press Home, then Mixing Layer Monitor, and select Channel 4 to work with the bass track in the demo song. Let's start with the EQ and Dynamics Processing. Each channel provides 4 bands of parametric EQ and a Dynamics processor. There are 2 ways to adjust EQ. First, press EQ, then F1 to select the EQ and attenuation screen. These are the 4 bands of EQ: high, high-mid, low-mid, and low. Each band offers controls for Q, the steepness of the band, with higher numbers producing a steeper curve; F, frequency fully sweepable from 21 to 20.1 kilohertz; and G, gain, to boost or cut each band plus or minus 18 dB. To make changes, simply select a band and a parameter, then use the data dial. The EQ curve diagram immediately reflects your changes graphically. Second, these dedicated controls do the same thing. Just press a button to select a band and adjust the parameter you want using the knob. The changes show up in the top corner of the display. You'll find these will show up in most function screens on the AW4416. However, you can also have the AW4416 automatically switch to the EQ screen whenever you use these controls. To enable or disable this, press Utility, F2, then move the cursor to Auto EQ Display and press Enter. Now, if you are looking at levels during playback and adjust the EQ, the AW4416 switches to the EQ page to show you what you're doing. You can also set this for Auto Pan. Well, on to the Dynamics processor. Press Dynamics, then F2 to see the library of Dynamics processors. Here you'll find compressors, expanders, gates, plus hard and soft companders and more, all categorized by application. You can even build your own library of presets or starting points. To isolate a track or group of tracks from the mix, use the solo function. To set this up, press Setup. Then, because there are more tabs than will fit in the bottom of the screen, press Shift and F1 to change the tabs. Then press F3 to select Solo Setup. You could also just keep hitting Setup to cycle through the tabs. Now move the cursor to Mix Down Solo and press Enter. For a more complete description, refer to the operation guide under Using the Solo function. Meanwhile, play the recorder and press Solo. Press Mixing Layer Monitor, then On for any channel or channels you wish to monitor. To turn the master solo function off, press Solo again. To monitor specific tracks before any EQ or effects, use Q. This function allows you to hear what's actually been recorded to disk. Again, for more information on solo or Q, refer to the reference guide and the operation guide. The AW4416 provides 2 internal effects processors with a wide variety of effects types, all with factory preset programs. Use these programs as a starting point, then customize them to suit your needs. There's a complete list of the effects programs and their parameters in the reference guide. You'll also find more detailed information on using the effects in both the reference and operation guides. For now, let's explore how to use the aux bus to apply a reverb effect to your recorded tracks. Start by pressing aux 7, then F2 to see the library of effects programs. Move the cursor to the list and rotate the data dial to see the available programs. To load your selection, move the cursor to Recall and press Enter. Move the cursor to OK and press Enter again. Now press Pan, then F2 to see the pan route screen for channels 17 through 24. Here, we'll make the pan settings and bus assignments for the input and return channels. Make sure the Return 1 stereo button is on, and the two pan knobs are hard left and hard right. These settings mean the Effects 1 return will be sent to the stereo bus. Now press aux 7, then Monitor, and when you play back the song, use the faders to adjust the Effect 1 send level for the recorded tracks. It may also be necessary to adjust the return level of the effects. To do this, press Home, the 17 through 24 return, then use fader 15 for effect 1 and fader 16 for effect 2. By the way, use aux 8 to access the send levels for effect 2. Keep in mind that this is the same process you'll use to affect input channels as well. Just press Home, then choose inputs 1 through 16 here, or 17 through 24 here. As you start to get your levels, effects, EQ, and dynamics where you want them, it's a good idea to save them in a scene memory. This allows you to instantly recall the status of all mixing parameters. You'll find this snapshot of your mixes will give you the peace of mind to experiment, because you'll know you can always come back to this setup anytime you want. You may even find that scenes are a quick way to automate mixing, as they also offer a way to fade smoothly from scene to scene. But for more precise control, you'll want to use the AUTOMIX function, which we'll review in the next section of this video. For now, here's how to store and recall a scene. To store a scene, first use these plus or minus keys to select a destination scene number, displayed here. Then press Store. Use the keypad in the display to enter up to 16 characters for a name. Move the cursor to the letter you want, then press Enter. Use these arrows to move the cursor left or right, and press here to add a space. By the way, turning Shift Lock off makes other characters available. When you are finished, move the cursor to OK and press Enter. You can also see, save, and recall scenes by pressing Scene. A quick tip: it's much easier to input a name using an optional serial mouse. They're inexpensive, readily available, and really do make getting around the AW4416's function screens easier. The AW4416 AUTOMIX function is an awesome way to precisely craft your mix until it's just the way you want it. It lets you build up your changes to panning, EQ, effects, fader moves, and much more, all in real time, layer by layer. You can even punch in and replace a single element of a complex mix with complete ease. The real benefit is that this function allows you to concentrate on wearing only one hat at a time. As engineer, you make the changes you want, then go back as producer and listen to the final mix, making sure it's perfect. You'll hear all of the layers of changes exactly the way you want them, time after time. Just imagine the creative options. Well, let's experiment a bit on our own with the AUTOMIX for the demo song So Fine to get an idea of how it works. Press RTZ to go to the top, and since we're going to be working with recorded tracks, press Home and Monitor. Normally you would save the current settings as a scene, or recall an existing scene as the starting point for a new AUTOMIX. In this case, we'll just make some changes to the existing mix. Press AUTOMIX, F1, then move the cursor to AUTOMIX Disable and press Enter. This activates the current AUTOMIX, which we turned off earlier in the video. Next, choose the type of events you want to overwrite or record, such as fader moves and channel on. To do this, move the cursor to the on-screen button for each function and press Enter. Move the cursor here and press Enter to put AUTOMIX in Record Ready mode. Now, when you put the recorder in play, AUTOMIX will engage its record mode. To select the channel to record, press Select and begin your moves. In this case, let's do something obvious that will give us some visual feedback. When finished, press Stop to stop playback and end AUTOMIX recording. Had we pressed Auto Record, playback would stop, but AUTOMIX would stay in Record Ready. Since we're editing an existing AUTOMIX, the AW4416 asks if we want to update the AUTOMIX. Move the cursor to OK and press Enter to keep the changes in memory, but note that we haven't saved to disk, so it's not permanent yet. To check out our changes, press RTZ, then play. And here are the moves we made. Remember, if you've been following along on your AW4416, don't save these changes. Well, this just barely scratches the surface of this very powerful and very useful function. Read the tutorial for a behind-the-scenes tour of the SoFine mix. You'll also find a comprehensive description of AUTOMIX in the reference guide and operation guide. The recorder section of the AW4416 provides an additional stereo track beyond the 16 audio tracks. Think of this as a master 2-track mix, either a snapshot of your work in progress or the final mix for mastering. To record the stereo track, press Record Track Select Stereo. Play back the song, then press Home, F4, and watch the left-right level meter. Adjust either the individual faders or the stereo fader to keep the mix from clipping. When you are satisfied, press Stop, RTZ, then press and hold Record and press Play. When you are finished recording, press Stop. To listen to the newly recorded stereo track rather than the current real-time mix, press Track, then F3. This screen allows you to play back or erase the stereo track. In its default state, the AW4416 has the stereo track muted. To unmute it, automatically assign it to monitor channels 1 and 2, and mute the remaining monitor channels, move the cursor to below the M and press Enter. When this is unlit, you're listening to the recorded stereo track. When it's lit, you're listening to the live stereo mix. You'll find more detail on the stereo track and all of the functions in this section of the video in both the reference guide and the operation guide.